Hi, it's Paula Akialis. In this short video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use 3M to determine the DRG. So once you log on to 3M, you'll come up with this screen. And one of the first things we want to do is open the integrated code book. So click on the red book with the 10 on it, and you will get this screen, which you may need to resize. You want to keep that kind of on one side of your screen, and then with this you're going to I'm going to move this over and resize it so we can see both at the same time. Okay, so we have the integrated codebook here on the left, and we have our first screen in 3M here. Now we need to make sure that the product on this screen is set to DRG Finder. So just use the drop down here and select it if it's not already selected. So over on gender, you want to select the gender that matches the case scenario. And if it's not given, then it doesn't matter. Choose female or male, depending on the type of diagnosis and the type of procedure. The age of admission, if it's not stated, just put in any adult age. If it were for a newborn, you would put in 0 for age at admission, because this is data that's understood to be in years. So if it's a newborn, it's 0 years. Now we can adjust our admit date for our length of stay. Now this one happens to be set to March 2nd, admit with a discharge date of March 5th, and the length of stay is computed for you. Let's say that this 44-year-old female stayed 2 days. We can go into the admit date and adjust this. So let's say she came in on the 3rd instead. And you see how the length of stay is automatically updated. Alright, so we're ready to begin, and we're just going to check this screen one more time for the correct gender and age, the correct admit and discharge date with length of stay calculated. And of course, we need the DRG Finder for our product. Okay, so we're ready to hit continue over here. And the first screen that comes up is the one that asks about patient disposition. So this is just data that's gathered to tell where the patient went after the hospital admission. So the patient disposition has many choices. If it's not specified in your scenario, just assume that they went home and select choice 1. Otherwise, select the appropriate choice. Now notice on this screen is the admit diagnosis. The admit diagnosis is collected in the inpatient setting, but it is not used as part of the DRG calculation. So for this, let's just say that the patient was admitted because of a cough. So you could type in the word cough, and that would enter into the logic-based encoder. But let's just see how to do it in the same manner that you're accustomed to. So over here for your index term, you can put in cough, and you can select R05. It pops up here. This is the tabular entry, and there's nothing else for us to add to the characters. We're satisfied with that code, so we select it by clicking it, and then you get an instructional note pop up. You can just click OK here, and the software will place it here under Admit Diagnosis. When you're ready to move on then, you hit Add Diagnosis, and you notice that ICD-10 Principal Diagnosis comes up. So let's say that the condition established after study was acute bronchitis. So we're going to go over here and search for bronchitis. And then we need to say that it's acute. And here it is, acute or subacute. And the code is J20.9. So we click on it, we look at it in the tabular, and we can scroll up to make sure there's no instructional notes that we need to be aware of. J20.9 is a complete code, so we click on it. We read the instructional notes and hit OK. And then you'll see that J20.9 has been placed as our principal diagnosis. Now, if that were the only thing that happened during this admission, we would see that our DRG is DRG 203. And that's also repeated here. So this DRG 203 is bronchitis and asthma without a CC or MCC. The relative weight for the DRG is listed here, and it's also listed here. So it's a 0.6970. This means the average length of stay. So a patient with these diagnoses that groups to DRG 203, we would expect to have a stay of about 2.9 days. Okay. The other things that I want to point out is the question mark here. You can click on this, and it gives you some additional DRGs information that might be related. So it says DRG 202 is bronchitis and asthma with a CC or MCC, and DRG 203 is bronchitis and asthma without a CC or MCC. So let's see if we can move our DRG 203 to a 202 by adding a CC or MCC to the account. All right, so let's say this individual also has AIDS. So we're going to go over here to our index and type in AIDS, and we get the code B20. We check it here, it's the right code, and we click on it, and we click OK for instructional notes. Now you'll see here that it's added the B20 as an additional diagnosis, which is correct, because she was admitted for the acute bronchitis. But the AIDS is a chronic condition that needs to be coded, but it'll go after the principal. Also notice that there's a check mark here in the CC column. That means that the B20 is a complication or comorbidity. In this case, we know it's a comorbidity. So look what has happened now to the DRG. The DRG is now 202, and the relative weight has increased from 0.6 to 0.9, 401 to be exact. So that's how you can tell that when you add a CC or an MCC, the DRG changes and the weight goes up if there's a CC or an MCC. That makes sense because a patient with B20 on top of the other diagnoses, you would expect to require a higher intensity of care. Also notice the average length of stay has gone up. I believe it was 2.9 days on the other scenario, and when we added the B20, it increases to 3.7. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Let me show you one more example. If we hit Next Patient, we can start over with this screen here, and I want to bring in a scenario that you may see in another example. So here's a scenario for us to read and to get the DRG on. The 54-year-old female with chronic systolic and diastolic CHF was admitted because of melena. Patient had EGD with biopsy of the stomach and duodenum. No findings were found to determine the source of the melena. She was discharged home after a 2-day stay. The case was coded correctly. Please indicate the POA indicators and use 3M to determine the MSDRG. Okay, so let's go to our first screen here. And we know it's a female and the age is 54, so we'll enter that. We know that she had a 2-day stay and then was discharged home. This is already set up for us for a length of stay of 2, so that's fine. And we have the product here, DRG Finder. So we're ready to hit continue. And we were told that she was discharged home, so we select option 1. Now, in this scenario, it doesn't really give us the admit diagnosis. So let's just say in this case that the, it is the melena. So let's code the admit diagnosis as melena. And I'm going to just move this over for just a moment. And we'll go here to the integrated codebook, and we'll type in melena. And the code is K921, so we click it. We look at it in the tabular, we go up a little to make sure there's no instructional notes to be aware of, and then we click K921 and click OK on the notes, and there it is. So the software has placed it as our admit diagnosis. Now we want to continue with add diagnosis, and now it's asking for the principal diagnosis. Well, in this scenario, she was admitted for the melena, and there was no definitive diagnosis that was found. So we're going to code the melena again for the principal diagnosis. So since we're already here, we're just going to code on click on K92.1 again, and again here, and say OK. So right now, we have an admit diagnosis of K92.1, and we have our principal of K92.1. But that's not all. She also has systolic and diastolic CHF, congestive heart failure. And it says that it's coded correctly, and the correct code is I50.42. So let's go ahead and enter that. And the easiest way to do this is come over here to the tabular side of 3M and just type in I50.42. And you don't even have to put in the decimal points to find it. So here it is, and we click on it, and we say OK at the instructional notes, and here it is here. So now we have an additional diagnosis of I50.42 for chronic systolic and diastolic CHF. Back to the scenario, it's asking us to also put in these two procedures. So she did have an EGD with biopsies of the stomach and duodenum. So let's go ahead and do that. And the easiest way to put your procedures in is to click over here on procedures and then just put them in manually. So the first one was 0 dB, 0 dB, 68ZX, 68. I have to move this over so you can see it a little bit better. Z and X for the biopsy of the stomach. Now, when you have your procedure all set, you hit this diagonal arrow to get it into 3M. Okay? So you'll see here that our first procedure has been added. Now we need to clear this and do it again for the second procedure. So the second procedure was 0 dB9, 0 dB9, 8ZX, 8Z and X. And that's for the biopsy of the duodenum. Okay, so again, to get it into 3M, we hit this upward diagonal arrow, and now it's in place in our 3M software. Okay, so here we have the scenario, and we put in our codes, and we need to tell it the present on admission indicators and the MS-DRG. So if we scroll up, we can see that the MS-DRG is 378, GI hemorrhage with a CC. You'll notice the I50.42 is what is the CC, and it does affect the DRG. You can know that if you click on this blue question mark, and you'll see that these DRGs 377, 78, and 79 are sort of grouped together, GI hemorrhage with an MCC, GI hemorrhage with a CC, and GI hemorrhage without CC-MCC. So we say OK, and we notice that ours has a CC, so we're in 378 for the MS-DRG. So the answer here will be 378. And the only other question it asks are for the POA indicators. So when we look at this, the K92.1, was it present at the time of the admission order? And the answer to that is yes. In 3M, you can click way up here on this purple POA box, and you'll see your two diagnoses here that need POA indicators. So you just select yes here, and the next one was the CHF, and that was also present on admission. So once you do that, you click OK, and then you'll notice that they show up here with their POA indicators. So in here, we would just simply mark a yes, and here, again, a yes. And that's it. That is our demo of how 3M works for finding the MS-DRG, and we'll do some more exercises in class. See you then.